Hello and welcome to this episode of Hospitality Talks. I'm Katy Moses, MD and founder of KAM Media. Thank you so much for joining me. For some of you, this may well be your 39th or 40th episode, and certainly the last one of the year that has been 2020. So please welcome Steve Alton, the CEO of the BII, to top us off from this year. Steve, would you like to just briefly introduce yourself?
Yes, thanks, Katy. So, as Katy said, I'm the Chief Exec of the British Institute of Innkeeping. Simply, we're a membership organisation for individuals. We've got over 9,000 of them. The vast majority of those are licensees running pubs across the whole of the UK. So, we're very much here to very much help as we can, support them, develop them, and inspire them, actually. And that's been particularly important, during this incredibly tough year, sharing their fantastic stories, innovation, and all they do locally in their community, which we'll come back to.
Thank you very much. Steve, there is nobody better placed in this country at the moment than to tell us where are we right now. What figures do you have? And I know that it's a constantly moving feast. I know that what you say now may well be different tomorrow, that was different from yesterday. But what pubs do we have open? What pubs do we have closed? What's our employment rate looking like? Any kind of state of the industry facts that you can share with us right now?
Yeah, as you said, right now it's a really incredibly difficult and I think a pivotal moment, really. A lot of our members were very hopeful of trying to trade some sensible levels through December. Many have been absolutely chopped off from doing that, and many are incredibly nervous that with the tier restriction that's going to be announced actually today, in terms of any changes, that might preclude even more from doing even a basic level of trade. The vast majority going into this were actually loss-making anyway, at best break-even, because of the restrictions. The tier 2 changes around mixed households was absolutely, a cliff edge. 30 to 40% loss in revenue, and what was, again, around break-even, if you were lucky, suddenly was absolutely loss-making as well. So it's pretty desperate. And I think a lot of our core members will be considering their futures, very sharply in the next few days, depending on what happens with any ability to trade December. But well, there's no doubt, that this is not about crying wolf that I think some politicians will use. 300,000 jobs gone in hospitality. That's a stark stats. That's the Office for National Statistics that's pushed that out. And equally, we've checked in with our members throughout this and with the other trade bodies, and half of them are expected to fail as businesses in the next 6 months if things continue. And what does that mean? That means if the tiers stay as they are, the restrictive measures, as devastating they are, stay in place. And again, I will say it, unfounded, to put in some of those restrictions. The evidence base isn't there. The Public Health England, we've all seen the stats throughout, it's less than 3%. And equally, the picture that's painted by the scientists is not the reflection of a modern day pub with all of the guidelines that we've implemented. So when they talk about us all getting together at the bar and singing at the top of our voices, it absolutely bears no reality to the physically spaced out environment, the very safe, calm, managed, the professional hygiene standards and everything in between that they do. So massively frustrating anyway with those restrictions. But yes, if they can't get the restrictions lifted, and we need a clear exit plan to get out of this now, really, really clear exit plan, because how do you plan financially to hold on in that hope that you can trade more freely towards the spring of next year, which many believe is probably the one of the earliest points where we're going to see maybe some material changes to tiers as well. But the second, so if that doesn't change, but equally it's support, it's short term, it's getting the guys through it. I think there's been at the moment a lost reality of what it's like to trade a pub. And those pubs that are even shut, they still have bills, they have insurance to pay, there's utility bills to pay. The grants don't even cover the basics. Mm-hmm. So we continue to push for a very clear package of support, but we'll come back to that. So I think the next few days and weeks will be really telling for business failure, where some will make the decision that they don't believe that they can, they can hang on to spring. Yeah. Obviously we hope as many as possible, but really we need government now to step up, do that small piece of investment, in a context of the next 5 years. It's a tiny amount of time and it's a tiny amount of money compared to the 40 billion that the hospitality sector generates each year in direct taxation. Never mind the impact it has to the high street, to tourism, to all those interconnected, parts of our community. So yeah, I think we'll see some pretty horrible numbers coming through in the next few weeks unless there's a change.
I think you're absolutely right, and I just want to hone in a little bit there on the the view of us all, as you say, arms around each other, singing in bars. I've been going in and out of hospitality since it opened on July the 4th, and I have not seen anything like that. And all I have seen is responsible hospitality operators and retailers who are doing the best that they possibly can to keep their staff and their customers safe. And it does make me think whether the people who are making the rules have actually been out into these environments yet, or whether they are still thinking of, even the pubs that they're thinking about, they didn't even exist before the pandemic. If I stood at a bar and sang at the top of my voice, I can assure you I'd be asked to leave very, very quickly in any pub or bar. That doesn't happen. Talk to me, can you give me any sort of specific areas of support that are needed going forward into 2021 for different types of pubs? Because of course every different, whether you're food led, wet led, whether you're community local, whether you're a destination pub, they all need different areas of support. What are you asking for?
Absolutely. Before I go and touch on that, just go back to that point about the reality of pubs as well. So we at the BII produced a video, just a 1-minute video, working with some fabulous operators. So this is, Yummy Pubs that we know very well, Brewhouse and Kitchen, and Red Mist, to show the realities of what a pub in pandemic times looks like, with the guidelines, with the masks, with all of those great things in place, and still delivering a great experience. So if you've not seen it, go onto our website and click on that link. And for pubs and anybody, push that out as the reality. So when they reference a pub, that's the pub they should be referencing. Yeah. Not this caricature of a pub that doesn't exist in this world. So sorry, rather passionate on that point. We put that energy in, and it really shows not only the protocols, but the community it connects to. It shows the people it's supporting in terms of employment, the local suppliers, the brewers. It's not just about the pub. The pub is at the heart of bringing these things together. Anyway,
when we share this interview, Steve, I'll make sure that we actually link to that video below this interview. So anyone watching, do have a look.
Brilliant.
Just click on the link.
Brilliant. So come back to your point about support. So support for me is 3 things. Right now, it's about the fragility of the business, and we need to get them through to spring and through to that better trading environment. So what does that mean? It means realistic grants, and we're pushing for that. We're on a minister's call yesterday. I was talking directly to the minister myself. That, it isn't realistic. It doesn't cover the basic costs, as we said earlier. So we need that. We've asked for compensation because we've been restricted from trading December. Again, with no real, discernible evidence at all about hospitality. We respect there's a bigger pandemic going on, but equally, respectfully, we could have been part of the solution for that safe socializing when everybody has that burning desire to reconnect to people they've not been able to see for such a long period. And we could have done that safely. And we know the impact of them not letting us do it because people are doing it in households, which is where the infection rate goes. Yeah. So there's a piece around short-term finances, and that's around very much about grants. Equally, as you're planning your survival, business rates and VAT, we did incredibly well to get, obviously business rates deferred and the lower VAT rate. We need commitment now for that to be extended for the whole of next year, because that business rate's coming back online from April is a big bill. I was talking to an operator last night. It's £2,000 a month that suddenly comes back in again, and it's a huge amount. So, they're going to be incredibly fragile businesses. They need that support to get through. So that's kind of number one. Number 2 is the exit plan. How do we get out of it? What are the mechanics? How can we plan? If it's numbers, of inoculations to age groups and risk profiles, again, because the R rate is relevant right now because obviously the impact to the vulnerable and causing mortality. We all get that. But as you do more and more inoculations of the vulnerable and the older age groups, the R rate becomes very different because it can be a high rate, but doesn't have the same level of impact in terms of death and pressure on the NHS. So, but we need some clarity. How is this going to, these tiers, lessen, the restrictions lessen, household mixing, which we've done incredibly safely. Yes. As one of the key targets, get that removed, particularly in tier 2, and allow us to come together safely in the pub. So we need real surety and commitment on what that process is. And then 3rd is very much about longer term. This recovery is not going to be a short few months, it's going to be years. So how do we, make sure we've got a really good framework of support from the government allowing us to rebuild these businesses, build the momentum. They were viable going in, they were growing going in, they were innovating, there was investment. The private equity was coming in hugely to hospitality, massive movements in the market because they saw the opportunity. So we need that supported, because ultimately, we don't want handouts. We want the ability to trade fairly and reasonably. Things like long-term business rate reform is another part of that longer-term piece. We're not on an even wicket between digital enterprises and bricks and mortar enterprises. And that is just fundamentally wrong, because it's absolutely hammers high street and pubs. When you've got some very large brands, to be unnamed, operating in a digital space who do not pay that contribution. So to re-level that playing field and support, these, again, very viable businesses. So, short term, let's get them to spring. Let's get the doors open with a sensible and really clear methodology. And then let's give them the support over the next few years as they recover their businesses, trade, back and grow, but they've got to pay back the debt. These businesses are, need that time to sensibly manage that. So that's the ask. And we've been very, very clear. We've worked very closely with the other trade bodies, particularly UKH and BBPA. So all of those asks have been really consistent into, obviously, not only the head of Bays, so Alok Sharma, into Rishi as the Chancellor, and directly into Boris as well. So they're in no doubt what we've asked for. They're also in no doubt about the economic return on that investment, because this is short-term, and again, modest investment for a sector that can bounce back and, as ever, be at the heart of the economic recovery and rejuvenate the high street. Go back to summer. We were encouraged to throw our doors open to kickstart the high street and the workplace. So, the evidence is there. So that's the plan. It's very clear. And right now, we just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and we are not stopping, because this is just so important.
No, I absolutely agree. And I think that what all the trade bodies is doing has been fantastic. And I was been particularly impressed with the speed that the Pubs Matter campaign took off. I sort of woke up one morning and did what I always do that nobody should do, which is do your emails in bed at 6 a.m. in the morning, and sort of suddenly saw Pubs Matter, Pubs Matter, Pubs Matter, all over all of my feeds, and that was fantastic. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, look, we were absolutely determined to get across why pubs particularly, and the pub sector, because that includes the breweries as well, and the tap rooms, and so the pub is that, I suppose, that not just a location, but it's more about the experience that we give as well. And we wanted to really make sure there was no doubt about how much the UK public valued pubs and what role they played in their community. So as you know, the BII has done a Heart of the Community award. We've now awarded over 100 pubs across the whole of the UK, doing amazing things. These are businesses on their knees, looking at, no money in the bank with debts, and they still focus their attention and effort to helping other people out. So if that's, meals for vulnerable, if it's prescriptions locally, all these really special things that they did, absolutely, celebrate these guys. Amazing. But we wanted to really make sure it was in the public consciousness about, we're going through this major risk right now. These pubs are at real risk of being lost, and they play such an important part. So a couple of things, this is about getting into MPs and the decision makers as well. So go back to the Heart of the Community. All of those winners, we wrote to every single MP, of which their award winners were in their constituency. So allow them to celebrate with them and make the point, this is the reality of what these small businesses, these local employment livelihood organisations do, in terms of tangible social value. So then the Pubs Matter was very much about how do we really get some energy behind that and remind everybody of how important this sector is, and particularly, again, MPs and those decision makers. So, the call to action was very clear. It was get out there, you saw the ticker tape going through all the social media. It was write your MP. We've got a fantastic tool on there that takes literally seconds to personalise an email directly to your constituency MP and hit send, and it's gone. So they're in no doubt. Yeah. So when they are involved in the debates, in Parliament for the support that we're going to need, which those asks are very clear, they will understand the sheer volume and energy from the general public about, them doing the right thing and making sure we got that support. So we were at the heart of that with CAMRA, who've done a fabulous job as well, really connecting to amazing breadth of members across the whole of the UK, but alongside the other trade bodies all coming together, and just to, to get it out there. And look, it's a great start. Part of this is all about building that momentum to get what we need to safeguard our pubs. So we're pleased, but we're not celebrating, because it's just another element of trying to keep that pressure and awareness on why pubs are so different, so special, and add so much more value. They're not just another small business. They're not just another economic stat. They should matter to us, and that was what was behind it. So that's the first phase of it. We are looking to build in that in the new year to keep that pressure up as well. But look, we're so pleased with the positivity that people have responded to it, and it's heartfelt, and it's
absolutely,
it's so emotive when you see the impact that it has to people's mental fitness, not to have access to that place that they value so much, just to reconnect and feel better about themselves, particularly now in a time where there's so much anxiety about where we are, and it's almost coming around for kind of 12 months of separation in that normal day-to-day contact. So it's a good start. It's definitely resonated in all the right areas, and we'll build on that moving forward.
Great. Now, as you know, I'm an eternal optimist. So I want to try to finish on something positive, primarily because if I go back through all the negatives, I might actually finally have that breakdown that I've been threatening to have for the last 8 months. So I have been trying to, and I blogged last week about the opportunities that this pandemic has brought for the industry. Now, I know they're few and far between, and I'm certainly not saying there's a silver lining, as I said last week. But what I have noticed is we have, as an industry, embraced areas that traditionally we have not had much success in, and suddenly started to have a lot of success. And there's 3 sort of main areas that I pick out. The first one is the younger generation, the Generation Z, so that are currently sort of 18 to 24. I mean, the youngest of which is only 10, but just speaking about the sort of legal age people at 18 plus, they were possibly avoiding the industry so much. We weren't seeing them in pubs so much. It didn't register as part of their socializing. The research that KAM have done shows that they have actually been the most likely to go back into pubs, bars and restaurants and hospitality as a whole. So I think there's a positive point there, is that we've possibly shown a different side of ourselves to that generation who before weren't engaging with us as much. The second one is obviously delivery and at home and that kind of offering, which again, we've been so... consumers have wanted to be part of that journey with us into bringing our hospitality and pub brands into the home, and now they're kind of on board properly, and we're doing that well. And then also, I think the other point is the day part idea. The idea that pubs are not just somewhere you go for a quick pint after work, or you go and get drunk with your mates on a Saturday afternoon, but that actually they can put so many other offers and opportunities for the community to engage with them out there. So those are the opportunities that I personally am clinging to as a right. How can we make the best of these? What, in your view, are the opportunities that have arisen from 2020?
Well, I think there's been lots of real reflections. A lot of our members and their businesses have had to strip back their business and really understand what matters. So who are their customers? What is the offer? Really had, through necessity, but I think there's some real learning that they can take forward about keeping that focused delivery as well. But my expectation and my hope as well is, look, this is the year of reconnection. That's what this year is about. We're all coming out of this incredibly constricted, society, and we've got the vaccine. Now it's about pace to get that, out there and allow us to go back to our normal lives. But in a sense, that reconnection I think is a huge opportunity for renaissance of pubs, because they play all the roles you spoke about. So from the breakfast meeting in the morning, or the coffee catch up, or lunch, and the demographics now are more aware than they were before about what the pub is, because of all the great things we've talked about. But equally, that they just want to get back to it. We saw that in the summer. You saw that resurgence of people wanting to get, and for those that could take advantage of things like eat out, wasn't everybody, but those that could, they were booked up. We were all struggling to get slots in great places because of the sheer demand. So I think this is the year to capitalise on that renaissance, that rekindled love of the pub, get them back through. But I think what's at the heart of that is the experience. It's got to be a fantastic experience. It's got to be that warmth, that connection, that genuinely, you know, being embraced in a sense, you know, maybe not physically to start with, but hopefully in the near future. And because what matters here, you know, when we do our fabulous reviews, we may reference that amazing local beer from the brewery down the road. We may, you know, that amazing, you know, piece of steak or whatever it is from the local farm. But what we really, really always reference is how we felt, and it was about the people interaction and how it made you feel special and connected, and you know, and the emotional lift that you got from that. And so getting that experience right, and I think so many of our members, you know, their pubs have rediscovered, you know, those little moments about what really matters and how to connect. They're better on social media than they've ever been. They're better digitally than they've ever been. They've diversified, if it's takeaway, collection, groceries, additional services. You know, they've kind of solidified themselves, and it's now, how do you use that for the most impactful relaunch of their business? So, you know, it's a terrible cliche, but hit the ground running more than that. You know, I think we're going to go into a new world, and here's an opportunity to get your existing customers back to take, you know, greater advantage of everything you offer. But there's a whole rack of new customers now that I think see the pub very different, and they will have a burning desire to reconnect out there, and we can provide that fabulous, inclusive, friendly, welcoming place that caters to everybody. That's what's so different about, you know, the great British pub. So, you know, for those that can get through it, and it is tinged with that, and we have to be realistic. We've got a short-term, you know, kind of fragility and failure issue we've got to get through. But if we can navigate that from a blend of, you know, allowing us to trade better and also that short-term support, I think that's the opportunity that we could take advantage of. But we just got to be supported through to it. But if we got to it, I think this is the year of that reconnection, and very much year of the pub. And obviously we at the BII will do everything we can. Again, look, our essence is, you know, we are absolutely here to, you know, support, develop, and inspire our members, and that inspiration comes through that over 9,000 members who have such great insight and stories and things that have worked and experienced. And you know, we've shared that through the year, and we've got great plans to share that, you know, to another level next year, because, you know, this is such an open industry. People share their innovation very, very freely. You know, there's never a tinge of competitiveness in a sense. Everybody wants everybody to do incredibly well. So it's harnessing that, and we've got a great resource. And we've learned some things through that adversity this year. I think there's been a lot of lessons learned. We've got to use those to accelerate ourselves next year. So that's my hope, but I'm not dismissing the realities of where we are now. But let's get through that, and I think that opportunity awaits.
Thank you, Steve. I cannot thank you enough for, well, you and your team, because you've got an amazing team there, and everything that you've been doing out there is absolutely recognised by the rest of us, and we thank you for that. For anyone watching, you know, do feel free to go onto the BII website, see what resources are available for you there. Have a look on the KAM website as well. There's a little button called resources, I'm told, and under there we've got loads and loads of free insight available to you, whether you're an operator, whether you're a supplier to the industry, or just drop me an email direct if we've got anything that we can do to do what Steve is saying is necessary, which is get the industry back up on its feet again. Then we'd be very happy to do that. Steve Alton, Chief Executive BII, for the last time in 2020. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thanks, Katie.